guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm very excited about because I'm going to be doing my May TBR. Now for the month of May, I'm doing quite a bit of travel, which I know I've mentioned a few times. But with that in mind, I wanted to pick a few books that I knew would be well suited for me being on the go. So I actually have some shorter books on my TBR and some very long ones. But I do feel like I like to have shorter books while I travel because it keeps me motivated. Like I'm reading, I'm completing things. We progress. It's important. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the shortest books on my TBR are the ones I'm going to be taking with me to Japan. That is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I've read the first two books, so I want to complete books 3 and 4 of this series as well. I really liked book 1. I loved book 2, so I'm really excited to check out the rest of the series and follow Murderbot on its journey through self-discovery and space. This is a really interesting collection of short stories. In it, we're introduced to our main character, Murderbot, and Murderbot is a robot that gained consciousness. At the beginning of book 1, it's trying to pass off that it has not gained consciousness and it's just a regular old murder bot doing its job. And its job is basically to protect human clients on these very dangerous faraway planets. Murderbot is very good at its job, but what it really wants to be doing is really just watching its favorite television shows all day, every day. It's a very relatable individual if you ask me, but things get complicated for Murderbot very quickly in book 1 and a job kind of goes lopsided. From there, we follow Murderbot as they go on this journey of self-discovery, trying to figure out why it gained consciousness and more about its past, which is sort of the main topic of book 2, and I loved book 2 so much, so I'm excited to see what Murderbot's gonna get up to next in books 3 and 4. These books are so funny and introspective, and I love Murderbot as our main characters, and I'm just really excited to jump back into this world. I also feel like they'll be perfect travel companions given that they are so small, so you know, I can feel like I'm progressing while I'm traveling abroad. But yeah, these are on my TBR. The next book on my TBR is not short at all, and that is An Echo of Things to Come. This is actually the opposite of short. It is very, very, very long. It's over 700 pages long, and this is book 2 to the Likeness trilogy by James Islington. I read book 1 of this trilogy last month, and I liked it, and I just sort of want to continue my momentum picking this up, because we all know I feel like if I don't pick things up right away, it might be like years until I continue on, which is a really bad habit, especially because I forget a lot of things. I also feel like this trilogy is kind of popular right now, so I really want to get my thoughts and feelings out there for anyone who might be curious about it. This is the second book to a Roman-inspired fantasy trilogy. Structurally, this series is like a very classic fantasy tale and story. It kind of reminds me a bit of Wheel of Time, at least in its setup. Plot-wise and story-wise, they're very, very different, but in terms of like the pure structure, they're similar. So if you like that sort of vibe, it's definitely worth checking out. In it, we're introduced to our main character, Davian, and Davian is gifted, meaning that he has magic. In his world, there was basically a rebellion that occurred before he was born. Previously, people who were gifted worked alongside other very powerful individuals named augurs, and they basically ruled and dominated everything, and there was a rebellion that overthrew them, and now anyone who has magical abilities is really, really controlled by the government and viewed at with a lot of suspicion, and a lot of their movement is super contained, which Davian himself experiences. He's also hiding a specific set of magical abilities that no one else can really know, and at the beginning of book 1, he, alongside some friends, go out on a quest and adventure. We also are following other characters kind of all across this empire. Again, this series has a very classic setup, but I will say it's very plot forward. The first one read super, super quickly, and I really enjoyed reading the characters for the most part, so I'm curious to see how the story is going to progress. I'm also curious if I'm going to see some improvement in terms of the writing style going into book 2, but regardless, I at least want to start this, if not finish this month. Next up, I have Pleiades Rising by James S.A. Corey. This is the 7th book to the Expanse series. I recently learned through one of you guys via comment that the 6th book within this series was kind of like a middle ending. I think structurally the series is kind of organized in 2 parts, which definitely makes sense now in hindsight, especially considering the end of book 6. That being said though, I'm really looking forward to see where the authors are going to take this series next, because every book has been so enjoyable, the plot so unbelievably explosive. This is another book I feel like I'm going to take with me to Japan, probably in ebook format, just because it reads so quickly and it's a series I'm already comfortable in, so I feel like it'll be really easy to fall headfirst into. But this is the 7th book to a space opera series, wherein which humanity has gone beyond the scope of Earth. There's now governments on Earth, the Moon, Mars, and a series of space stations called the Belt. Tensions are high in the solar system though, and lots of war and conflict occur over the course of this entire series. We follow a lot of different perspectives and characters, characters, but we do have a core group centering James Holden, who is a ship captain. We follow them on a whole host of different adventures. We follow them on different planets, different assignments, different jobs. They're constantly involved in everything, conveniently. But honestly, I've really enjoyed the ride of this series so far. I took a really long break between books 5 and 6, and I don't want to let that happen again. I'm hopeful to maybe be able to finish this entire series before the end of the year, so I can kind of focus my attention on new and different stuff. But yeah, it's gonna be a great time. I love this series so much, but I'm just trying to stay motivated and not letting a year pass between, you know, the next book, which again, we all know, I forget stuff. Next up, I have 2 literary fiction options for my TBR. The first is Northwoods by Daniel Mason. This was actually one of my IRL book club selects. We basically vote on 3 books for our book selections, and this was one of the ones that was nominated. It did not win, though I did vote for it. It's actually a book that I've had on my shelf now for a few months, and I've always wanted to read it, but there was like a new layer that I noticed in our book club discussion, which made me want to read it more. The concept of this book is basically we follow a house in the countryside, I want to say in England, and we follow this house over many, 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 many generations, following the people that both live within and around this property. But the extra element that made me very intrigued is I think this has like a mystery, like a murder mystery component. I don't know, but I'm curious about that. Like, what's the mystery through time around this house? I must know. I also have heard such good things about this writing. This is one of like the top books that released last year, and it also just feels like a literary fiction release that's very much for me. And it also has like photography throughout it too, which just feels very intriguing to me. I want to read and experience the story because I just feel like I'm gonna love it. Another book that's on my list is Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. This will officially be my second Ann Patchett book of the year, and also one that feels very seasonally appropriate based on the cover of the book. I'm gonna download the audiobook of this because it's narrated by Meryl Streep, another book I'm gonna bring with me while I'm traveling. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to finish it, but I love an audiobook on a plane, especially when I do another activity alongside it, like Stardew Valley, you know what I mean? But this is said to be a really beautiful, quiet, and very character-focused story. It's set on a farm, and I believe it also takes place during COVID. We follow our main character, who is a mother. She's basically recounting a chapter of her life from her past to her daughters when she was a part of this play, and also dating this actor before he got famous. I think it's supposed to touch on like the many lives that mothers lead and how often a lot of people don't realize that mothers existed before they became a mom. I just feel like it's going to be beautifully written. I really enjoyed Ann Patchett's writing in the other book I read of her, so I'm hoping to keep the momentum going in terms of picking up her works because I have a lot of them and she's released a lot of them, so we gotta play a little bit of catch up here. The next book that's on my TBR shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and that is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. I'm officially 40% of the way through this book. I definitely made some progress on it finally last month. I've had this book on many, many, many TBRs and quite frankly never picked it up. I just stared at it longingly from across the room but said not yet. But now I'm finally in it, and I transparently am obsessed with this book and I don't want to put it down. So I'm hoping that I will be able to maybe finish or get very close to the end by the end of this month. This, of course, is the third and final book to the final trilogy within the Robin Hobb universe, following Fitz and the Fool as they go out on one final quest together. The heartbreak and drama that has existed within this third trilogy is truly unspeakable, not only because it would be an unbelievable spoiler to anyone who hasn't read this series, but also because it's been destroying my life now for months. I think this might be my favorite trilogy. It's honestly hard to say, but like the emotions I feel while reading this is just so unbelievably intense. And the new characters, let's say, that are included within this, I love so much. Robin Hobb continues to show that Fitz and Fool have one of the most fascinating and dynamic relationships I simply have ever encountered. And being in Fitz's mind and watching him contemplate and process his emotions is truly just a gift. You know what I mean? And I just love Fitz so much. And I'm at a very stressful point in this book, and I don't feel like the stress is going to go away anytime soon. But this is a long one. I want to say this is over 800 pages, but again, I've read 40%. We are getting there. Next book on my list is another final book within a trilogy I've been meaning to finish now for a while, and that is The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. I mentioned in a video that I was kind of nervous completing this trilogy just because of some comments I got about this third novel, but I felt very reassured actually after mentioning that, because a lot of you guys said that this was actually your favorite book within the series. I think it just might be a little controversial in the way that it just might not land for everyone, but that actually piqued my interest more. I personally really enjoy Naomi Novik's writing, and structurally how this series has been put together so far has just really intrigued me. I love the characters and the setting of this book so much, but in this story we're introduced to our main character Elle. And at the beginning of book 1, we find her as she's attending a place called the School of Mans. In this world, magic exists, and being a magic user is actually very, very dangerous because magic attracts these very powerful, massive monsters that you have to destroy to basically live. And the most dangerous time period of your life is being a kid when you don't have control over your magic. So a solution was created to basically send all magical children to school that exists within this non-place so they'll be safe, but monsters have made their way to the school, meaning that while they're attending their classes and trying to spend time in their dorms, they also have to fight off monsters. But this school is still safer than existing outside. It's kind of worth the risk in some people's eyes, resulting in a situation where many students create alliances. People are very secretive. Everything is very dangerous. Nothing comes without a cost. There's also a lot of privilege based on who you know and who your family knows as well. Elle, our main character, is a self-described loner. She doesn't want to make connections with anyone. She really hates spoiled enclave kids, and she's truly just trying to survive and make it till graduation. Unfortunately for her, she's really, really powerful, but her magic wants her to be evil, making everyday magical charms difficult. However, though, we watch Elle as she gets involved with other students, see her sort of take on the school and kind of try to transform the experience of going here. It's so funny and endearing. I just love the concept, the setting, and the characters so much. The writing style is very stream of consciousness too, which I also feel like works immensely. It's just so cute. I love the first 2 books. I read them back to back, and it's time for me to finally complete it. And the last book that's on my list is another romance-leading fantasy story. I'm still a little bit craving some romantasy, but this would actually be a reread for me, and that is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. I recall this trilogy being amazing. I loved it so much. Book 1 is definitely the most romance forward, if I recall. Books 2 and 3 are very fantasy forward with lots of world building and magical study, which I also appreciated immensely. But in this book, we're introduced to her main character, and at the beginning of the story, she is imprisoned. And she basically strikes a deal that's very, very dangerous with like the head of the guard here in this fantasy world to basically be a poison tester, putting her life on the line with every meal she tests for poison. However, though, things get complicated. Her magic sort of gets complicated. The relationship gets complicated. I recall this being so good and so delicious, enemies to lovers. I just really am curious to see if the story holds up as well as I remember, and I think it could be a really fun reread and revisit, especially if I maybe read the whole trilogy for a vlog, so we shall see. Alrighty guys, that is my May TBR. Please let me know down below some books you hope to get to this month, as I would love to know. There are some new releases that I did not include in this list that I also very much want to read, but I'm also trying to be realistic with myself this month. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!